Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the second episode of our brand new podcast here on the YouTube channel. It's called Bettor Days Ahead, and we discuss all things punting from value to variance and everything in the middle. I'm Matt Hill. I'm joined by my new regular co-host, Felix Morson-Pate. And Felix, really enjoyed last week's episode. Delighted to be back at it. And we're recording, I think it's fair to say, this is our commitment to the cause here. Due to work shifts, we are recording this during the second half of Liverpool-Man City, although I must say, without cursing it, it looks game over at 2-0.
No, I think it's very likely to, although we've seen one team on Merseyside against a team from Manchester go 2 goals up and collapse, but I don't think it's quite the same calibre. But apart from that, no, good to be back. Big weekend of sport, so much to watch and to punt on, so I'm very happy.
Yeah. And we start each show by recapping our betting week a little bit. I'll give people the update first, get it out of the way. I'm no further forward with getting my Ludovic Ajorc bet settled. We've not had the stats updated. I have made a visit to my local betting shop. I won't name the company yet. But yeah, I went in. Very nice lady behind the counter, but I knew, having spoke to the lady previously, that her chances of getting the matter reversed were probably slim to none. And so it prevailed. She had a call with head office, but nothing doing. So I'm currently in the process of trying to get the stat sheet overturned. I don't know how much I'm going to fare with that, but I'll keep you updated if I do ever see those winnings. But aside from that, how's my week been punting-wise? Up and down, as usual. But I had quite a good weekend, to be fair. Couple of the Premier League betting show and EFL betting show winners landing. Had a nice touch on Caleb Akoli fouls on Friday night to start us off. And then highlight yesterday would probably have been back to Cunha any time for Wolves. I had a couple of nice winners yesterday, but a couple of losers as well. We're green, which is ultimately the end of the day where we want to be. Doesn't matter how you get there. Felix, how's your weekend been? Week from a punting perspective?
Yeah, very mixed. Again, slightly green, which is all that matters in the end. Domestic football has been one of the worst weekends I think I've ever had. We're
really?
recording this on a Sunday, like you said, and I've had a bet in every championship game, and I didn't get my first winner until I had Luton under 0.5 goals today. But then continental football has been really good. Clean sweep in France, clean sweep in Germany, clean sweep in Turkey, and 5 out of 6 in Serie A. So the dichotomy of those two has been interesting, to say the least. Very rare I ever split that extreme. Outside of football, the golf went a bit better this week. Jamie Rutherford on the DP World Tour, nice top 10 finish for me.
Yeah.
At 8-1, came joint 5th.
Who won that tournament in the end? Who won that tournament in the end? Because I've missed it.
Good question. I'll pull it up. I've just had it.
Leave it with me.
On my screen
you carry
here.
on talking.
Been betting a little bit on the cricket Champions Trophy. We had the big grudge match yesterday. England Australia had a lot of bets on the player props, route runs, ducket runs, which I should have probably gone higher on that. Having in hindsight, a couple of under wickets for the Aussie bowlers, but I was let down to counteract all that by England not winning the match, which I think is a disappointing result given where we were in the game and the total we put on the board. But
yeah,
hey, here we go again for the
seemed
final
to. I didn't
games.
I didn't watch that match, but it seemed to be very quickly get away from them. Like I had a look at the betting, and within half an hour, the market had really, really moved. I think when they were 4 down at Australia at one point, weren't they? And looked in real trouble, and then next thing you know, they were quite long odds on.
Yeah, it was. I do think the market shifted slightly too aggressively towards England in play. I think we were 3s on for quite a big chunk of the end of our innings and the start. First 20 overs or so of that Aussie innings, but I think it's just the lack of variety in the England attack on those flat wickets. It was a very flat track. Yeah, it could have been a 400 plays 400 if people had batted a little bit more sensibly, honestly. So disappointing result, but there's still positives, especially with the bat to take into the last 2 group games and try and get through to the semis. So yeah, overall a decent week. not touched the Six Nations this weekend, and I'm probably glad because I don't think anyone would have seen Wales leading at half-time against Ireland yesterday.
No.
And the MLS as well, that's the most exciting bit of football.
MLS, wow, okay. I don't play the MLS much myself, but I look forward to piggybacking on some selections over the coming weeks.
Watch out for World of Wages in a week or two.
I definitely will. Yeah. Shameless plug for Felix's column there, where he's put up a lot of winners this season. So definitely give that a little look. Goes live every Wednesday, and I'll give it a plug underneath this video in the description as well, the latest edition. So you can go and read it. You can read it right now while you have our dulcet tones in your ears, if you so desire. We're going to finish the show this week by discussing one of the viewer questions that we had underneath last week's podcast. And we'll also be giving our thoughts on the punting week ahead. But the bulk of the episode, as is going to always be the case with this podcast, is going to focus around one particular topic from the betting world. Now, feel free to send your podcast topic suggestions to us, either via the comments or via the Odds Now social media pages. But this week, we're going with Ante Post betting, and obviously quite a broad subject once again. I thought, but probably best start by just summarising exactly what it is we're talking about here, because there's a few different ways of skinning a cat with regards to Ante Post. Now, if we're being really traditional and technical here, Ante Post would refer to something quite literally before the event. So you're betting on something before an event has started. So we might look at this in a long-term perspective. We might want to punt a golf or a tennis major months or weeks before the first round starts. We might want to punt the Darts World Championship 10 months before it starts. We might want to put our Premier League winners on in July, just ahead of the August season. And they're all Ante-Post markets. Now, in American terms, we might refer to them as a futures market as well. And there's a lot of pros and cons to this kind of bet, as we're going to dive into and discuss. But for the purposes of this conversation as well, I also think it's worth us including the fact that just when these markets actually go live as well, it doesn't technically count as an Ante-Post bet once the market is live. But for example, if you were to place a bet on Arsenal to win the Premier League tonight, I don't know, maybe you need to get rid of some money quickly for some reason or something, I don't know. But if you were to do that, it wouldn't technically be an Ante-Post bet, but that bet isn't going to be settled for another 3 months. And for the purposes of this conversation, long-term betting, I think it also ties in nicely with what we're discussing here. So, Felix, when we look at these kind of markets, how often do you play them, I suppose, is a good place to start on a personal note?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's one I've always struggled to find the right balance between how much resource I devote to Ante-Post or outright betting compared to like singles. As I briefly mentioned last week, I do quite like to have a high turnover of bets. And say it was a knockout tournament, so say a tennis major or a darts tournament, and you gave me the choice between I could punt outright or I could kind of roll up the match by match singles, I'd probably go for the latter option. Having said that, I do quite a bit of outright betting, particularly for golf majors, tennis majors, darts TV tournaments, things like that. Less so, I prefer betting Ante-Post on knockout tournaments than kind of league structures. So I won't really bet like Premier League outrights or things like that. But the Champions League, now it's got into the knockout phase, is something I like to look at. I think they're a really interesting market to bet on. Obviously, one of the big benefits, I'm sure we'll touch upon that briefly, is higher payouts compared to if you're just betting singles. And if you can, there's probably more margin for error in how these markets are priced, and you can probably find bigger plus expected value plays. The downside being, you're tying up your money for a long time, and there's probably a higher bookie margin on those markets.
Yes, all good points. When I look at Ante-Post betting, it is something I do a lot of, I'll be honest. It's probably my second most profitable venture behind darts event-to-event betting. I've had a sort of good run with it, particularly for the last 3 years. And that comes in all shapes and sizes, as I kind of suggest. But I quite like rolling up doubles and trebles on these kind of markets. And The reason that I sort of mentioned earlier in the piece that we want to include these markets like once they're live as well, I'll still continue to monitor them as the season goes. So, for example, to give you a practical example of that, at the moment with the football, we're at that stage of the season where there's maybe 10, 15 games left in the EFL, Championship, League One, League Two. You've got maybe clusters of anywhere between 4 and 8 teams in each division that are still eyeing up the bottom 2 playoff spots. I love getting with these teams in the promotion market, these teams that I think are going to just steam into the playoffs, and then maybe I'll lay them off a little bit, but I just like having an open position on them. One that really catching my eye at the moment is Bolton in League One, sat in 8th or 9th there, but with a new manager in Steven Schumacher. They've won a couple of games in a row there. I do think they can sneak into the playoffs, and I think if they get into the playoffs, they're a really dangerous proposition because of the size of the club, because of the, going to Bolton in a playoff would be tough going for any team in League One. So these are the kind of market ways that I like to observe their markets in running. When I talk about Ante Post in terms of football, July time is a very busy time for me. I'm trying to sort of scope out teams, particularly lower down the pyramid, that I think are in the mix for the title or promotion. Non-league can be an absolute goldmine for this kind of thing, but you do have to you get one shot at getting them on because the price will go immediately. But if you can be privy to a little bit of information, and there are some real misprices in the non-league, but like I say, it doesn't take much to move that market. If I, again, look to coin an example, and it was a losing example, I managed to get some really nice prices about Scunthorpe to win the National League North a couple of seasons ago, and I doubled them up with a couple of league winners that I liked from Championship, League One, etc. I had a really, really strong position on Scunthorpe. I was getting on them at around the 3-1, 5-2 mark. They went off even money and they were dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Ended up losing in the playoffs despite having the biggest budget in the league by 3 times. But yeah, that's the way I like to play it. And not come May time, I normally do have a little bit of cash to collect and sort of boost the coffers. But yeah, you're right. Tying your money up, it's not for everybody. I do tie quite a big percentage of my bankroll up in July, and it does affect my staking from a single bet perspective. I could probably up the size of my singles throughout the year if I bet less Ante Post. But it's the way I've found it to be profitable, and I do generally enjoy those bets. And I think that's another thing as well, for a more recreational bettor as well, to get potentially a 9-10 month run out of one solitary bet. It's fantastic value for money, isn't it?
Especially when you get a big payout as well. If you're getting something, I don't know, 20-1 or bigger, and you've waited all that time and you've got a decent investment in that wager, it is really nice to see it pay off. I was just going to pick your brains quickly about, I don't know if you find this, but actually sometimes these outright markets are bigger value when the event goes live than pre-off.
Definitely. Yeah.
For example, like Littler at the Grand Slam, as soon as the knockout stages were formed and MVG and Humphreys have both gone out, I just thought the market was so slow to react to Littler. I think he was still about 2.87, and he probably shouldn't have been bigger than 6-4, probably even money to win that tournament. And I do think you can, we talked last week about markets that are not monitored as often as others, and these outright markets, if a couple of big results come in, I don't think the traders at some of these bigger firms are quick enough to react to the in-running updates of both actual results, but also rating changes with some of the participants as well.
Yeah, definitely. And, regular viewers of my stuff, particularly the dart stuff, will know that I do like to build a book for the World Championship. And that is another strand of the Ante Post betting ecosystem, I suppose. It gives you the position, particularly on a long-term market. So now what are we? 10 months away from World Championship at Alexandra Palace. You could safely say that there's not many people thinking about it right now. And I like to use that to my advantage. I'm watching a hell of a lot of darts. I'm taking in a hell of a lot of information. And if I do see a price on a player that I think is just simply not going to be there for the rest of the year, and I'll take it now. And I have debates with Adam, who I do a lot of the darts content every year. It's a bit of a running joke. He thinks that I just hemorrhage money on this World Championship market all year for the price of for for the bonus of having a few nice prices come December that very rarely win. But, I tend to disagree there. You can be fanciful sometimes, but I'll just give you a picture of some of the prices I went into last year's World Championship with. And, did they win? No. So make of that what you will. But I had Luke Humphries at an average price of about 6-1. I had several Vessel Nyman at 3 figures. I had Jan van Veen at 3 figures. I had Richie Edhouse at 500. So, going into it, I felt like I didn't need a lot to go right to suddenly have a really, really tradable position. And I could have easily traded Nyman and Humphries before the offer. As it was, I really fancied Humphries, and I let more of it ride than I possibly should have. But there are opportunities there right now, and I could say a name right now that I'm probably going to be repeating towards the back end of the show. But there's a player in Jermaine Watamina who's playing career best darts, and he's just absolutely flying. And I'm not sure markets have really caught up with him yet at the moment. And I'll take the chance on that now, and I'll get him on side now wherever I can. Doesn't necessarily mean I think he's going to be a world champion, but if I think he's going to go off at half the price, then why would you not give yourself some leverage and take it now? So Gerwyn Price is another one. I think we've not seen Gerwyn Price play this well for 3-4 years. Can he win at Alexandra Palace with the crowd? I don't know, but can I get with him at 28-1 and be confident that I'm going to be on at a big price come December? Yeah, I can. Yeah. So this is another way I like to do it, building books, and there's a lot to be said for it. But I think you have to go in with the idea of, am I building this book to trade, or am I building this book just to have a good position? Because you can get carried away and suddenly you've got silly money in a market and you're looking for ways out. I mean, I got Littler on side a little bit at Christmas, but not as much as I should have, and spent the entire tournament trying to get him beat, and it ended up costing me, So you do have to have a game plan in these situations as well.
Yeah, and I think the trading angle is a really important part that people don't always consider. I think it's becoming more and more common, and obviously with the introduction of cash out features, that's a semi-trading angle. But generally, if I am betting rather fanciful outright prices, it will be to trade out eventually, whether that be lay it on an exchange, or if I can back against their opponents at quite big prices. I think it's a really worthwhile strategy, because if the price moves again, and I know you do this with the Worlds all the time, if the price does drift out again, you can have a bet and you can end up getting it bigger, and as it contracts, you can trade off, so you can get rid of all the risk, or you can take a little bit of profit. So there's different ways of going about it. I think trading to get rid of your risk there's a lot of people who don't like what they call hedging in that situation. But I think if you can trade to a position where you've essentially got no risk riding on it, I think that's a really good position to be in as a bettor.
Yeah, and there seems to be a little bit of and I don't want to blur the lines here. I think it's really important that we talk about this. Cash out offers and trading on an exchange are not the same thing. And people need to be aware of this, that cash out offers, they do have a margin factored in for the bookmaker's benefit. And, people think that a cash out is for the benefit of the punter. It's not really. It's for the bookmakers to tempt you to get rid of good positions. And you can almost always, providing there's enough liquidity, trade your way out of it via Betfair at a much better margin than what you're actually being offered on your cash out. I can almost guarantee you that every cash out you're being offered, you're being fobbed off by about 5 or 10% of what you should be being offered, really. So for your man on the street, that might not be an issue. They might just say, I want the money and I want it now. But once you know how the game works, you need to be thinking, if I'm pressing a cash out button, are we sure there's no other way I could do this to make myself, to lock in an even bigger return? I.e., if you've got a cash out offer on something and it's there's only 4 runners left in the market who can win, you may well be better going and backing the other 3 runners at best odds across the marketplace than pressing cash out. And use things like there's like hedging calculators online, so you don't have to be a maths whiz to do this. You could put in your exact position. I've got player A at 10-1 and player B, C, and D are these prices. What do I need to put on each one to hedge off a profit, guarantee a profit? These are tools that everybody should be aware of and should be using frequently.
Yeah, absolutely. The bit about the cash out, like working on the other side of the counter now, it's 99.9% of the time it is going to be a negative expected value play for the punter, and it does come back to the utility, like you talk about, if you do want that money. But yeah, I think the trading angle, particularly, I don't use the exchange as much because it can be difficult to get liquidity for some of these outright events, particularly the darts that I know we both like to bet on. But even like a really simple example, if you've got a good position on someone and you've got a positive cash out and they're playing someone, say it's the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and their opponent is anything above evens, but say it's, I don't know, 3.0, 3.2, something like that, you can really go to town on hedging on that opponent and know you've got a consistent profit no matter the result of that game. And I think it then allows you to, you've locked in a bit more of your bankroll, but you've got that weight off your shoulder that you know some of it is going to be freed up and you're coming out in a better position than you went into that game with regardless. And you can already start planning ahead for the rest of the tournament. If your man goes through, you've then got bankroll to bet on the final, and if not, then you can start to approach the final in a different way. So I think there's loads of ways to go about it, and people need to get out of this mindset of stopping thinking about an anti-post bet as almost like a set and forget. You bet a team at the start of the season, and that's it. You'll either win or lose it in May. Whereas actually, it's there's a whole world in which you can change your position within the season as more information comes to light. And that is the most important thing as a bettor, is finding a play where the information allows you to make a better bet than the market thinks the price is.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So if we've bet Liverpool at Ante Post for the Premier League here, I'm not just sitting twiddling my thumbs now hoping they get over the line. There'll have been plenty of opportunities at different points of this season with Man City and losing 8 in a row to get City on side. When Arsenal lose yesterday, to get Arsenal on side. You should be making sure that you get to May. And yes, Liverpool might be your best winner, but you certainly don't want to have Arsenal, Man City as losers. It's crazy to leave that amount of risk when you're on such a good bet. And I see people do it all the time, and they come to you like it's a hard luck story. Oh, look at this. It's so close. It's like, well, you've had opportunities there to lock in a lot of money and you've not done it. It's not so close. It's just bad betting. And don't get me wrong, as a youngster, I'd have done that as well. I'd have let things run that shouldn't have run and lost and felt hard done by. But eventually you do have to learn your lesson and think, okay, I need an exit strategy here. And like I say, I still don't always get it right. But I lost on the dart outright market. Well, that's a lie. Because I had Adobe. I managed to trade myself into a profit when he beat Price. But I was sweating on that game more than I should have, put it that way. I had a plan, and it was to take Littler on. And it didn't work. But I went into it with a plan. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I knew what games were my opportunity, what bet I needed to place if that game didn't go my way, did go my way, etc. And with an event like that runs over a long period, like that tournament's 3 weeks. So you've got plenty of time to anticipate, okay, if option A happens, I need to do this. If option B happens, I need to do this. There's no excuse. You can't just be hobbling along and then think, oh crap, I'm in a bad position here. You've got to be proactive with it. I think it'd be nice for us to sort of talk about how we would maybe approach betting an anti-post market. So I'm not going to put you on the spot here, Felix, but I'd be happy to pull up a market on the screen if we did want to just have a look at maybe remark between us about some prices. And quite clear to the listener here, this has not been rehearsed. This is impromptu, but I thought it might be nice to get something up. Now, just before we do that, I want to just talk about, and I know horse racing is not really an area of strength here, but I think it leads on to a wider topic. I see a lot of horse racing punters. Obviously, we're up Cheltenham on the horizon, which just takes over the world for 4 days, doesn't it? Certainly in the UK anyway. And I see a lot of horse racing punters saying now anti-post is dead in horse racing. The pricing is just too negative. And I've got a little bit of experience with this. I mean, I wasn't quite around for the golden era where you were getting 33-1 shots going off, odds on or whatever. But when I first started playing Cheltenham markets around 2010-ish, you were able to back horses 3 or 4 months out at quite nice prices and know that you'd have a trade and angle on them. Now, this year, for example, there's going to be about 8 or 9 odds on shots from across the 29 races, which is just insanity. And they're already offering markets of horses to win their race this year and win the same race in 12 months' time. And it'll be like 5 to 1, 6 to 1. So I wonder, do you have any opinion on the way that these markets are priced? Do you think that bookies are pricing some? I know you've already kind of touched on that, but you said that sometimes in running there's more value than there is pre-off. I mean, obviously they have to manage their risk, but sometimes is there a bit of an over-management of risk?
I think so. I think that has definitely come about with the rise of exchanges, because no bookie ever wants to be a bigger price than what's on the exchange.
No.
And give someone a risk-free arb or an arbitrage. For people who don't know, it's you can back something with one firm, back against it with the other, and you've got a risk-free profit in the middle. So that's definitely played a part. Especially some of these horse markets can rack up pretty big liquidities quite quickly. And if they've not got a 24/7 risk monitoring team, the opportunity for punters to get on and know that that price is going to contract more or less straight away is quite high. I think there is definitely a tendency to go defensive with these anti-post markets now. Because, like I said, no one ever wants to be the wrong price. No one ever wants. People are quite happy, I think, to be standout price on a single event, because your prices and your liability is never going to be that much, and that is part of being a competitive bookmaker, is finding ways where you can be the best price within the market while also still being the right price that you think it is. Whereas on these anti-post markets, I think the pricing goes so defensive, because as soon as someone gets popular, whether it be a horse, whether it be a football team, especially with the internet, there's so much access to information for bettors. It's information for the bookmakers, but everyone, including the punters, have got that information for free now, that no one wants to risk something happening, missing out on it, and they've just got a completely wrong price. I mean, if you looked at pre-off this season, it's not a horse race, an example, but Man City I think they were about 10 to 1 to get relegated, because everyone knew they had the court case looming over them. And it's just like there's very rarely a fair price on these anti-post markets. And I just think the casual bettor is, I've got friends who do bet quite a lot of horse racing, and very rarely are people betting stuff weeks in advance for Cheltenham. I mean, myself, the bit of horse racing I do dabble in, it's generally day off, if not day before. But I've got a friend who's lost 2 accounts in the last few weeks doing that strategy, backing horses he knows are good horses. The price is contracting on the exchange. The bookmakers are slow to react. He's betting them with the bookmakers. It's going off 4 or 5 points short than it should be. And the bookmakers don't like it. And unfortunately, the power is with the bookmakers now, that if you're doing something, they'll find one clause in the terms and conditions that says you're not allowed to be doing that, even though it's not an ARB. They just know that it's a wrong price. But the bookmakers are kingmakers now, and there's not really a lot people can do. And I think that definitely plays a part with the downfall of some of these anti-post markets. I know you wanted to touch on each way betting as well, and I think the lack of transparency to, again, the man on the street who wants an each way bet about what his payout will be and calculating that is something that can put people off those as well.
Yeah, and restrictions as well, of course, probably deserves a total own episode. I think that is a can of worms that we won't open just right now, but I will get a market up onto the screen then, just for the purposes of helping us. So if we're looking at this market, this is for next year's World Championship, starts December, of course, and we're looking at the end of February here. Luke Littler, understandably, a 13 to 8 best price favourite. Luke Humphreys at 9 to 2. Michael Van Gerwen, 10 to 1, but more like he's all sorts of prices, isn't he? He's all over the place on that market. And then it's 25's bar, really, and you can very quickly get into the realms of 3 figures. and go down as far as you like, really. Now, what am I looking for when I look at this market today? I'm looking for players who maybe, the first thing I'm doing is I'm scanning the market to see if there's any just outright wrong prices, i.e., has anybody not updated where everybody else has, for example. So there's nothing that's jumping off the page for me at the moment, but the 80 hanging on Jan van Veen at the moment with generally 40s and a couple of 66s. If you're that way inclined, if he's someone you want to get on side, this might be the time to do it, because I don't really see him going backwards. This is a young player on an upward trajectory, could well win his first major this year. And suddenly, that you're dreaming of a price like that. He's probably going to half from the 40s or the 66s, certainly. So that's one way that I would approach it. Now, I might be looking with the form hat on. I might be watching a more modest event like the European Tour, or the Pro Tour, and somebody's just convinced me that they've gone up a gear. Markets are very slow to react to the lower quality events, as we've kind of hinted and discussed. A going price, this is a price that I referenced earlier in the piece. You can see Betfred have cut him today to 18. There is still some 25 hanging around, and I think he's undoubtedly been the form player of 2025, a former world champion, plenty of pedigree. And what I'm asking myself at this point is, do I see him getting bigger than 25 to 1 this year? Now, you have to run through all the possible different scenarios in your head. Is there a world where going price falls off a cliff again and does absolutely nothing for the remainder of the year? Yes. Do I think that's likely? Absolutely not. I think his mind's in a really good place. I think he's more likely to go and win a TV event in the next few months than he is to fall off the face of the earth. So that 25s from building a book perspective, I would definitely take that, because I don't think he's going to get any bigger for some time. Now, would I be in a rush to take the price about Littler or Humphreys? Probably not. I feel like both of them are about right where they are. I don't feel like they're going to contract massively anytime soon. Humphreys, this is a price I might have been interested in taking about Humphreys, but the Littler factor puts me off. I feel like Littler is always going to prop a market like this up. And another topic that we've not yet come on to, but we may as well cover now, you do have to factor in public popularity, public money. In this particular market, it's all about Luke Littler, isn't it, Felix? Like, there's going to be so many people chucking Luke Littler to win the World Championship in throwaway multiples because they want something to watch at Christmas, and it's Luke Littler. And that props the market up for people like me.
Absolutely. And I had the same thing. Not even the December just gone, the December before. Oh, what's this Littler kid like? So what was he like? Hundreds or something?
100. He was 100 before the youth final, and quickly
and
into
people
about
going,
43.
what do you reckon for this Littler? So you can only imagine it got 10 times worse last year. So, and I think that public perception plays across all sports. I think we're seeing it in tennis at the minute with Novak Djokovic going off second, third favourites for a lot of events, when clearly the body is starting to break down rather rapidly. You see, even Manchester United, if they were not called Manchester United, they would not be going off some of the prices that they are this season. I would have said the same about Real Madrid, but I think the game against Manchester City might have dissuaded me from getting against them as much as I wanted to. But certainly, they've fallen into that camp at times this season.
They have just enough star quality to bail them out, don't they, Madrid?
Yeah.
That's the only difference, whereas United look hapless at the moment.
But you are right in that you've got to approach these markets with what are the right prices for every participants in your head have a price, but also who are the public players. And even looking at the top of that market, then I was shocked when Michael van Gerwen drifted out as much as he did last year, because I just thought if he'd have reached something like an 8 to 1 and 9 to 1, there'd be someone who hadn't watched darts since the last Ali Pali or even the one before and gone, that's Michael van Gerwen. He's the best player since Phil Taylor. How on earth has he managed to get out to that price? And I did think a lot of public money would have come from him and contracted that price. As it happened, it didn't, and he obviously went on and reached the final. And I think that was a massive value play. I had a little bit after his first game against James Hurrell. but not huge amounts. So yeah, I think that massively plays into it. The other thing with darts as well is it's unlike a sport like tennis where it's always fixed in the draw that one will play 16, two will play 15, etc. So if you can almost get ahead, there's a site I use, I don't know if you've used it, called dartsrankings.com.
Yes.
And it shows you the predicted order of merits for upcoming events. So if you can work out if someone is going to be able to get, obviously now we know the top two are sailing off into the distance. They're only going to be able to meet in the final from now. But if there's someone in the sort of 7 to 10, I think it's that 7, 8, 9 sort of region,
100%.
Where you're looking at a Damon Heta, a Chris Dobie at the minute. If they can get into the spot where they're either going to be 6th or 11th, and they're going to be in that other side of the draw to Littler, and they're not going to be in the same quarter as Luke Humphries, so they'd have to play Humphries in a semi, Luke Littler in a final. That's where you can maybe find a bit of value if you can work out where the top 16 are going to sit going into an event.
Definitely. And the other area that I'll play of the market is this area around the 100s, 150s, and it's full of familiar names, but it's somebody who do I think is going to be able to take a leap forward. And the one here last year was Nyman, who obviously is no bigger than 40 now, and I think that's plenty short enough, given his record at their venue and lack of experience. But you wouldn't want him any bigger, would you, from a bookmaker perspective, because of the talent he has? So,
and I think the same with Rids there at 50s. There's no way he'd be that before he did what he did at.
You could have stuck another 0 on it before last year's Worlds, but he just exactly. So there are guys in this section of the market who are 2 or 3 good months away from being 33. So I will constantly be keeping an eye on this and seeing who's there. I mean, Peter Wright is an interesting runner, isn't he? Always, because they can never fully write him off, but he is pretty much done. Pretty much gone at the game. Then you have people like Damon Heta who think at 100 people think he's going to take a step forward at some point. It's
I think Noppert there for me as well. That 150s, I know it's a standout, but even general hundreds, the man is so hard to beat, whether it be on the floor or TV.
And this is it. And you will get a bit of money in these areas as well. Martin Schindler there, so there are people having a look, but it's not a highly monitored market, and they are slow to react. And I can assure you that if one of these guys wins a Euro Tour event in really impressive fashion, you've got a good couple of hours after the event to mop up any price changes, and you could back and lay accordingly if that is your game. As I say, the only issue sometimes is liquidity on these kind of markets. But if you're confident that the price is going to hold or only going to keep coming down, it's definitely a way of playing it. Let's try a slightly different example here, just to give a little bit of variety. If I go into golf and I go into the Masters, which is obviously one of the most bet events, if not the most bet event in the golf calendar, probably the Open.
Probably is, yeah.
Maybe rivals it, but yeah, the Masters got to be right up there. Now, this is a totally different proposition, isn't it, really? Because there's different things here. We have a fixed field compared to a lot of golf events, a smaller field. Course form is massively, massively important in this particular event. And we have the whole dynamic of the live trade-off with golf at the moment, where some of the best players in the world are playing some of the most uncompetitive golf you could ever imagine. How do you factor that in, etc.? But this is a market that a lot of people like to get stuck into throughout the year, isn't it? We see a little bit of money for one of the men who is excelling on the live format at the moment, Joaquin Neiman. But yeah, this is an interesting one, Felix. Would this be a market that would take your interest?
Yeah, probably not this early. I like to play the golf market sort of the week, 2 weeks before. But I'll always be keeping an eye on it, if not necessarily starting to build a book, certainly keeping an eye on it and seeing how much the market reacts to certain players playing well to certain other players. Again, it comes down to that name factor you have to factor in as well. I mean, I think Scheffler's been shortening all the time. He's played very well in some PGA events. I think he's gone off shorter than 2-1 in some of the PGA, in some of the smaller
borderline
fields.
Tiger Woods territory, isn't it, for Scheffler?
Genuinely, yeah. And obviously, I think after what happened last year, that is a bit of a freak. He got escorted off the course by police and wasn't allowed to. Came onto the thing late. It was something to do with a drink driving incident or something like that. And, yeah. So I think without that, he'd have been right up there until the
exchange
final
was fantastic that day, by the way. People laying and backing him based on information from Twitter about whether he was going to be arrested or not. Fantastic.
And there you go. That leads into the whole thing about everyone's got access to this information now, and it's what you do with it that counts. But I certainly think, the live factor, I still don't think anyone's cracked where to put people. I mean, you've got John Rahm in there as third favourite. Like you say, course form, it's probably bigger at the Masters than anywhere else, given it is played at the same venue year in, year out. I think is he a two-time Masters champ now? But then you've got people like Ludwig Aberg still yet to win a major, but everyone knows he's going to win one probably at some point, and it's when backing him in the right times before that price gets slashed. I'd throw Victor Hovland still into that camp as well.
There's parallels, isn't there? There's parallels with all these markets. You all have this kind of similar makeup of your tried and tested, your favourites, your popular favourites, your young pretenders about to break through, and this and that. So they all have a kind of similar dynamic to them, regardless of the sport. But I think another thing that I want to flag with golf in particular that's brought it onto my mind, this does apply to other sports as well. There's some sports where I think respected tipsters or respected judges really do move markets. And there's a couple in the golf, namely Steve Palmer and Ben Coley, who whenever their picks are released, you notice a swathe of market movement as well. And that's something that you can play to your advantage as well. You could probably back them with a view to laying them a couple of points shorter if you're privy to that information before the general public. I think from a week-to-week perspective, it's probably hard because the prices go up very, very quickly. Traders probably get a tip off of who's getting put up before that. But I think they hold a little bit more power in this kind of market, because I think there's people who want to have a bet on the Masters that won't have a golf bet for the rest of the year, and they will latch on to whatever the golf expert is telling them to latch on to. So I do think that that's worth bearing in mind. You know, when are these judges going to go public with is there any way I can get to it first, and can I trade it? That's something else that I would put out there.
I think I would throw into that maybe the Snooker World Championship. It falls very 100%. Much into that category for me. Ali Pally to a lesser extent now, because I think darts coverage is a lot bigger, but certainly 3-4 years ago would have fallen into that camp. The Olympics, we had one last year, and that is 100% one where you will see prices absolutely crash on the Greek volleyball team.
I tell you what, I don't envy the people trying to price up the Olympics. So it's just an absolute minefield, isn't it? You're 100 events, of which you've barely got any like bona fide experts in. You got youngsters that are unexposed, never seen before. It's just it would give me a headache trying to price up one event, never mind 100.
Yeah, so I think that definitely, and I think that's so important that you flag that with the tipsters moving the market. And again, it all come in these events with slightly lower liquidity, because we go back to this thing of bookmakers using that exchange as a reference. If there's very little liquidity, they've got to remember how to price stuff up themselves again. And that's a skill that the bookmaking industry has lost a little bit in the last, 20 years or so.
Not needed it, have they really? But
I think it is important I think it's important to time the timing of when you're going to place these bets, particularly like you say in a golf tournament where there's going to be public money coming for certain players.
Yeah, let's just throw one more market out there. And I suppose football, a lot of these are active and running, as I say. But if we go on the Champions League, obviously this leads us quite nicely into talking about the importance of draws. There would have been a lot of movement in this market in midweek when the Champions League knockout draw was confirmed. Obviously, some sides benefiting from greater paths than others. This is obviously a massive market and a popular market. So maybe quite hard to get in there and nick those prices compared with some other lesser covered events. However, I would suggest a good alternative to trying to back the Champions League from a draw buyer's perspective. Maybe focus on things like the Europa and the Conference League, who are, drawn at the same time, but probably have a lot less market interest.
Maybe not the Conference League this year, given Chelsea are now, I think, 4-6 to win it.
On,
and they've been odds on since 2 games in. But this one, so I mean, I'm someone.
And by the way, I'd take that on all day. By the way,
yeah, I would. But I'm someone who's very happy with how this Champions League draw has played out. As someone who's on Inter Milan at 40-1, each way, because I just think they're in that. It's very much a draw of two halves, and you don't always get that. But this one very much feels like the side of the draw they're in, they're not going to face a huge threat until potentially Barcelona in the semi-finals, which is 2 rounds away, and someone could quite easily knock Barcelona out within those 2 rounds.
Definitely.
We saw Inter do a similar thing. They got the nicer half of the draw in 2023 and pushed Manchester City all the way to the in the final. But I think if you look at that side of the draw that they're on compared to the side of the draw that contains Liverpool and PSG, one of those is going out. Real Madrid and Atletico, one of those is going out. And Arsenal also in that side of the draw, along with Bayern Munich. It's I can see why Barcelona have been absolutely slashed into favourites there.
Yeah, and you know, the draw is important, and it comes in various shapes and sizes. You've already touched on sort of predetermined brackets and order of merits, players getting themselves into a better ranking. That we see it so often where you would be better off being ranked 9th than you would 8th, or you'd be better off being ranked 16th, 17th and 16th, or whatever. These kind of variables happen all the time. Are you able to access the information before the market to get an angle in there? And equally, when this draw is made, are you able to react quick enough? Do you know the possible outcomes? So if with the Champions League draw, for example, obviously the format has changed a lot in recent years, but there used to be iterations of the Champions League, and I think there still is to an extent, where pre-draw, some teams could only land in one of 2 places, even though there's 8 groups, you know. So you can do, with a bit of digging and a bit of research, you can have a good idea of what is more likely to occur than not. And of course, you're still taking a bit of chance, but we're talking about positive EV. You're getting all the variables on side, aren't you, really? And just being aware of things that maybe the general market is aware of, but hasn't factored in enough, possibly.
Yeah. And I think that slightly comes onto like, how would you mentally price up an outright event yourself and knowing what a good price is? And like basically an outright price for a knockout tournament specifically, and this is why I prefer betting knockout tournaments, you're basically, if you rolled up the prices of them to win however many games, so say they need to win 4 games from the round of 16, you're rolling up the price that they should be for those 4 games, and that's more or less the price you get minus a bit of extra margin on top. So actually, with some of these markets, the first thing I like to do, if you know the draw, is look at the outright price, look at how many games they need to win. So say it's 4 or 5, and then a very quick, simple bit of maths that you can do on the calculator on your phone is do the price to the root of how many games they need to win. So if they were 50-1, so that'd be 51 in decimal terms, and they had to win 5 games, you do the 5th root of 51, and whatever that is, that theoretically is what price on average they're going to be to win every game. Now, if they're already bigger than that price to win the first game that they've got, that's probably already a value bet. I did this with the seniors darts last week. And I
chaos in that tournament, absolute chaos.
Yeah, I stumbled on a couple of prices, but luckily one of them was Graham Usher at 25-1 each way. Got to the final, got a bit of a tonking in the final for Ross Montgomery, but I was him, Henderson, and I can't remember who the other one was, but those 3, the outright price was, if you worked out the average price that they have to be to win each game, they were already bigger than that in their first game. So I thought that was immediately a very quick way of finding value. I know some people did a bit of research on this with England in the Euros last summer, that England had got to the point where they were so sure that they've had to be like 1-5 to win every game, and they're obviously not going to be that.
I suppose that was not wanting to run up liabilities as well, which is something that the punter probably doesn't have to factor in as well. But interesting conversation. I think so. We'll just try to summarize it before we do our viewer question. I guess when you're approaching an Ante Post market, from me, the key is understanding the market, understanding how you anticipate it may move. Are there any reasons that it's going to move differently to market expectation? And can you take advantage of that? And then from beyond that, once you've got the price, how are you going to manage that price to make sure that you convert the good price you've got into cold hard profit? Are you going to lay it further down the line? Are you going to try and get all the other key runners in that market on side at their best price as well, and just make sure that you've got a book, if you will? you need an exit strategy. And also Ante Post market as well. I do think that my ultimate last line would be, make sure you have some fun with them as well. They are the kind of market where you can roll up 3, 4, 5 big prices, maybe for a big pot of gold at the end of the day. You only need to get one up a year and you'll be having a great time. And I'm hoping of my double figures amount of football Ante Post multiples that I've got on, there are still a couple running, and I'm hopeful of getting a couple over the line. I'm very, very relaxed. I'm sweating on one, and I'll give you it. It was Atletico Madrid without Real and Barca in La Liga.
Looking good.
It was, I want to say, Bayer Leverkusen without Bayern Munich.
Nice.
And then we've got Lyon top 4 in France, and it's teetering. They're in and around. And I think Atalanta as well. Top 4.
Not offside. I like Lyon.
Atalanta top 4, who they've been great this season. I also backed them each way for the league, actually, which was looking very good.
I did as well.
But
we've not even touched there either on things like Trixies and Yankees Lucky 15s. That could be a whole episode in itself in terms of rolling these up.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to do that because I'm a big fan of those kind of things, and we'll get stuck into them on another episode. But Felix, your final takeaway on Ante Post markets: are they worth playing, and how would you approach them?
Yeah, I think to summarize, it would be keep your percentage of your betting bankroll on them small. Look for opportunities where the draw is going to be in your favor. So if you can look to oppose favorites in a different half of the draw, that would be good. And keep monitoring them in running. Like I say, that's the key thing for me is don't sit on your laurels and make sure the price is getting updated. Not even every couple of weeks, just have a look and see if you still think it's the right price. And either if you're in a bad position, try and lay some of that off. And if you're in a good position, can you get on a better price?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think people can become too precious with their bets sometimes, and they just want to ride it out or they just want to let it win. But at the end of the day, you've got to just look at every bet you place as an investment. And if you invested in a company and that company announced that they was about to go bankrupt, you'd be doing everything you could to get your shares out before they went bankrupt, wouldn't you? So think of your bets in a similar way. Can I manage this position and damage limitation? Sometimes damage limitation is as good as a winner.
Yeah, and also don't be worried about missing a price. If something was 10-1 and it's now 6-1, don't think about the 10-1 is gone. Just think, is it still a bet at 6-1? And that's what you should do with everything. Don't think about what it has been. Try and think about what it will be, but certainly don't worry about what it has been. Just look at it now, and do you still think that's too big?
Yeah, spot on. Okay, well, we'll leave it there then. That leaves us with just about 5 minutes left of this week's show. We had a couple of comments on the first podcast. Appreciate people getting involved and leaving us a comment. I'll handle the first one very quickly. I had one from Ben Allen, friend in Carlisle, who asked me to talk about my bomb-proof treble. A lot of people in Cumbria will have fond memories of the bomb-proof treble, which I used to have put together every Saturday for our Sunday League team. And it had a freakishly good start to life. I think we won about 4 of the first 5, and I think a lot of people started to think I'd maybe cracked betting. Clearly, the fact I'm here today in my spare room talking about losers shows I hadn't quite cracked betting. But fond memories of the bomb-proof treble. So Ben, thanks for listening, and great to hear from you. I hope you're well. And then that other comment, which I thought was a really, really good topic to bring up. We were asked about the presence of boosts and super boosts in the in the current modern day market, and whether they should be backed every time because they have value, and where do we think they sit within the betting landscape? Felix, I'm going to defer to you first. Your thoughts on boosts. Should they be backed every time? Are they a good thing, bad thing, etc.?
If you ask me, they should never be backed, but I'll try and give a more well-rounded answer than that. Look, I think the thing with boosts is they play into a couple of things we talked about today, in that they are high hold markets. The bookie has a big margin on them, and they are generally bets on things that the public like to bet on. So my rather cynical view of these boosts is that they are things that are massively negative EV that are boosted out to something that's slightly less, verging on like break-even expected value, to try and look like the bookmaker is doing you a favor. Now, some of them are good, and especially if there's a decent limit on them, I know some of them are stupid and it's like a fiver, but if you can get like a £20 limit, a £50 limit, and it does still feel like a good bet. I mean, the one today, the Mo Salah one, I think it got boosted to 6-4 to score any time. And if you look at his record against the big teams, it just feels like a no-brainer. And it's still probably not a good price. You might still, in theory, be a 2-1 shot, but you're still getting less. A less poor expected value than you would be.
Less ripped off.
Yeah, no. So to answer that, no, they shouldn't be backed every time because the value. I don't necessarily agree with that, but certainly, there you need to dig into each one individually, and you probably will find a few good ones, but don't back them blind.
Yeah, my take on it, they are a loss leader for some firms. So, it's not that I see some people saying this has been boosted, so it can't win. The bookies know it's not going to win. I don't think it's quite that deep. I think they're very selective with what they boost. I don't think it's as willy-nilly as we're just going to boost this because it's popular. There's a lot of sharp minds, sharp algorithms working in this game, and it will be something that they think they have a reasonable chance of getting beat, but also enough to entice the public into wanting to back them. Take Cheltenham next month, for example. I expect to see the biggest odds-on favourite each day boosted. Now, that may actually end up being a big negative for the likes of Bet365. I know they lost a lot of money last year on their super boosts for Cheltenham, but it's a loss leader in that particular position because they want to get you locked in for your bets that day, knowing that 90% of punters are going to lose on that meeting and paying out a super boost. Ultimately, it's a drop in the ocean. So you just got to think, I think, have your sensible hat on, think about the benefits and the perks of the bookmaker as well and why they're actually offering it. But sometimes, yes, there can be value. I wouldn't say don't back them all the time. If you only back the good ones, I'm afraid to tell you, you will be limited. You won't be getting 30, 40 quid on for long. You'll soon be getting 10s, 5s, and then you will be no longer eligible for bookmaker promotions. Unfortunately, that is how it tends to go. But you can probably have a good time with a few of them if you're selecting.
And on the flip side to that, if you're on the risk of losing your account, do bet a few because it does make you look like a more recreational punter than you might actually be.
Nothing wrong with manipulating
I do
your
that
account
occasionally, and I don't think I've ever won a Bet365 boost. I think the two that sting me the most, the Harry Kane to score against Celtic last week, and he got hooked at halftime, and the most egregious one that I think everyone I know who likes betting had the Alex Isak shot on target against I want to say Bournemouth when they lost 4-1.
Yeah.
And he didn't score the goal, and they got absolutely nullified by a Bournemouth team that had about 10 fit senior players. So those are the two that sting. But again, it keeps your account ticking over if you do bet them every now and then. And they are a good bit of fun because the stuff that generally it's something that's going to have good TV coverage. A lot of your friends are probably going to back them as well. It gives you something to cheer on.
Exactly. And it is ultimately about more than making money at the end of the day. And so if you're doing it and you're having a good time doing it, get stuck in, but just know what you're going into and know the pros and cons. So thanks for watching. And I should really thank Harry Dove, who provided that question. Thanks very much, Harry, for tuning
Harry.
in. Well, that'll do us for this week on Bettor Days Ahead. We'll be back next week to tackle another big subject in the world of betting. Please get your comments down below. Any questions you'd like us to field at the end of next week's episode, any future topics you would like to see discussed in their own episode, and just what you're backing this week. Felix, I don't know if you want to just point anyone in the direction. UK Open got to be taking up most of my interest in the darts, and I have to give you one right now. Jermaine Watamina, I mentioned him earlier in the show. Ladbrokes paying 4 places each way. I think he is a bet. Felix, can you tell us what your week's going to focus around?
Yeah, it's getting to the business end of some of the European like domestic cups in football. So I'm certainly going to be looking. French Cup is one I always like, the Coupe de France, because you
get some great underdogs running in that, can't you, as well?
You had Dunkirk beat Lille in the last round, and can't remember who they're playing, but I am going to be looking to side with them. I know PSG are playing a 4th or 5th tier side, so I think getting on the PSG on a massive Asian handicap might be something I look to do as well. Copa del Rey semi-final first legs as well. I think Sociedad might be a bet against Real Madrid if you can get with them in some capacity.
Okay, don't say we don't give you anything on this show. Anyway, well, thanks very much for watching. As I say, we'll be back next Monday. And wishing you the best of luck for the better week ahead, and see you soon. Thanks for watching.